What is up, you guys? It's me, Gaylyn Lareese, and welcome back to another creative business video here on my channel. In a recent Girl Talk video, I shared with you guys my thoughts on burnout and where I think my burnout typically comes from. And I found that for me, it comes from me doing a lot of output, putting a lot of things out there, but not feeling like I'm getting a lot in return. And after recording that video, I realized that one of the ways I do get more input is through reading. So in this video, I'm going to share with you guys some of my favorite reads that I have delved into over the past 2 or 3 years since I've started my creative business journey. And this video is specifically for my micro-influencers, my small content creators, those of you guys who love creative stuff but also are trying to build a business at the same time. I'm also going to be sharing with you guys some of the biggest takeaways that I took from each book, just to give you guys a better idea of what really resonated for me when I read it. I tried to make sure that I mentioned books that are not typically mentioned in these business book videos. They're always recommending like the same 5 or 6, and let's change it up. Also, I'm going to list the books in my Amazon storefront down below in the description box in case you want to grab them yourself. So without further ado, let's jump into this video. In a recent video, I talked about how we're heading right now into a creative recession and how the effects of larger businesses are affecting smaller businesses. And with us being those small content creators, it really is important for us to analyze what our values are and how we're going to move forward when these larger businesses may not have the power that they currently have. Which is why my first recommendation is We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rodgers. The full title is We Should All Be Millionaires, A Woman's Guide to Earning More, Building Wealth, and Gaining Economic Power, which is why this book is so important, because I do feel like as creatives, we aren't really taught the importance of economic power and how we can actually become more powerful in making decisions either politically or in our own industries if we have more money. In the book, she goes from talking about how she went from someone who didn't really come from means and how she actually built her business out into being a $1 million business, and how in doing that, not only was she able to make more money, but she was able to actually do so in a way that supported her values as a person, and then use that money and use that wealth to help other people and other causes that were important to her. It's a really easy read also, so if you aren't much of an avid reader, I think this would be a really great read for you. It also includes little sections in the book where she gives more detail into statistics around a specific topic, or also just kind of delves into definitions of certain things. It's just a really, really great read. I think she wrote this book so well, and that's why it's the first on my list, because I highly recommend. Out of all of the books that I'm gonna recommend, this is the one that should be at the top of your list. The second book that I want to share with you guys who are creative business builders, micro-influencers, small creators, is one that I don't tangibly own, so I will put it up on the screen somewhere, but it is How Luck Happens by Janice Kaplan, and I believe it is also co-written by someone else. So like I said, I'll put an image of the cover up for you guys. But this book is one of the first books that I read on my creative business journey. I read it about 3 years ago, and it is such a good read. One, I love books that include statistics. I love books that include real world examples, and this book definitely does. In the book, she and her co-writer go around and find people who people would typically consider to be lucky and get more information about their journeys. And what they found, which is what the biggest takeaway for me was, is that people who are lucky are people who place themselves in a position to become lucky more often. And that's really what it comes down to. As a creative, we're constantly trying to meet these algorithms and find the right people and make things happen, but a lot of times it truly does come down to luck. And luck really comes down to how many times are you actually putting yourself out there to become lucky in the first place. In the book, they give this example of someone who is trying to catch a train or a subway train, and they're running toward the train's bulleting through, the doors are opening, and they have to make a split decision. Do they run through the doors and try to make it on time, or do they just just stop and accept that they're not gonna make the train and wait for the next one. And the reality is that the people who became lucky and made it through the doors are the people who ran, the people who actually put themselves in a position to become lucky and tried. And so that's kind of how I have chosen to look at my creative career, is like, how many times am I putting myself in a position to become lucky? And that may mean sending out extra emails, just throwing your work out there. How much work are you putting out there? Are you allowing yourself to become really just over-consumed with analysis paralysis and you're not putting out work at all? Because if so, that's probably what's contributing to you not having luck in the first place. So I loved this book. I definitely will be buying it soon just because it's one that I want to keep on my shelf. I try to keep books that have actually positively affected me in my apartment so that I can recommend them out to people and rent them out to people if they want them. But anywho, love this book. Definitely highly recommend. My next book recommendations for you creative business folk, you micro-influencers, small creators, it's actually a twofer. And the two books that I'm going to recommend are Believe It by Jamie Kern Lima and Build by Tony Fadell. So the reason why I included both of these books together is because I feel like both these books really highlight how, as a creative business person, your life experiences and your life lessons really parallel your business lessons, and how over time you come to see how both of those things meshed together. And I think both these books really do a great job of that. Jamie Kern Lima was the founder and creator of IT Cosmetics, and she went on to sell IT Cosmetics to L'Oreal for over $1 billion. She talks about how in creating this brand, she also had to accept herself as a person. She had some family secrets that came out that she had to learn how to deal with, and ultimately she ended up meeting Oprah, who was a childhood star and icon for her, and building a relationship with her that she would not have had she not gone through these personal journeys as well. So such a great read, another great read for women, just like the first book that I mentioned, but I love it. Now, the reason why I love this book is because Tony Fadell, first off, was the creator of the iPod and eventually the iPhone and the Google Nest home tech projects. He is a product designer. So project designer and engineer, I would say. Let me fix that. But the reason why I love this book is because he created the book to kind of be a mentor in a book. So sometimes if you're like me, for example, you may be trying to build this creative business and you may not necessarily have a mentor. You may not have someone who can kind of share their personal experiences with you in a way that is separate from where they are now and they can give you some insight. This book does a really great job of that. And also the cool thing about this book is that it kind of is broken down in a way that you can read it from beginning to end, but you can also just jump in and dive into different sections. So this is the book that I'm currently reading right now. As you can see, I'm not done with it yet. I started it about a week ago, and I share the books that I'm reading on my Instagram in my Instagram stories. So if you are looking for good books, I tell you in real time when I'm reading books like this on my stories. So make sure you go ahead and follow me there. Also, side note, if you are ever looking for good books, look for good podcast episodes, because people who write books, they go on a book tour to promote the book and they talk about things that they talk about in the book. And so that's how I found pretty much all of these books, except for one that I'm going to talk about, except for one. But so yeah, if you're looking for good books, look for good podcast episodes and see if how they're talking actually resonates with you. And if it does, check out the book. The coolest thing about this book also is that it is signed. I had no idea that it was going to be a signed book. I got it off of Amazon and that was a really cool surprise. But I truly am enjoying this book. I think it's also just a really cool perspective from the tech side. I'm not a big tech person, but we are truly seeing how tech is affecting us at a large scale as human beings and as artists, which I'm going to get to in a second. But seeing some of his major lessons in the book when it came to tech really helped me to understand certain things in my journey. For example, he mentions how The pocket crystal, which he had designed and created back in 1998, I believe, was very similar to the iPhone that we currently use now, which is really cool and really crazy to think about. But at the time, it didn't really solve the needs of the people because a lot of people didn't have internet. A lot of people weren't actually using mobile phones like how they were using when the iPhone eventually came out. And so it really taught him that sometimes something can be a great idea, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it meets the people's needs at that time. And so that may mean that you have to sit on that idea or change it basically to fit what people actually need at the moment. And I thought that was a really cool lesson that he shared. But yeah, super cool book, highly recommend for sure. Now, my next book recommendations are also a twofer, and I'll explain to you in a second. But the first of those two is The Death of the Artist by William Dershowitz. Maybe I pronounced that wrong. I probably did. But the subtitle is How Creators Are Struggling to Survive in the Age of Billionaires and Big Tech. And you guys, this book for me came right when I needed it. Now, I will give you a little warning. It's a bit of a downer. It's a bit of a downer, so if you're feeling a little bit down already, I don't recommend reading this one. The reason why I truly enjoyed it is because it helped me feel less crazy. So as a person who moved to Los Angeles from a relatively small town, and I was moving here to build a creative career, I started to notice things, and it felt like, ain't nobody else talking about this. Why is no one else talking about these things? Am I crazy? I'm seeing things that aren't making sense. And it just seems like that's like the normal for everyone else. And the truth of the matter is that they do exist. Those are real issues. So for example, he talks about how a lot of artists who are successful now is because a lot of them have means. A lot of them have a connection. A lot of them have something that puts them at a higher level already when they start off. And a lot of times people who are born into lower economic status are fed this rhetoric of like, if you just work hard enough, you'll be successful. And it's like, yes, and you also have to align yourself with someone who already does have the means or someone who is able to invest in you. I love this book as well because he interviews a bunch of different creatives and all of them at different levels of societal versions of success. And so you kind of get to hear the ups and downs of what all of their creative journeys have been like, and it really puts it into perspective how important money is when it comes to building a creative career. Something else that I also noticed about this book is that, as you probably would expect, a lot of the people who are creatives, who are, again, successful, is because they used technology or found a way to use technology to their benefit because they noticed how technology was driving who was able to become successful. And that's what's honestly driven more of my interest into the world of tech, is simply because they seem to be able to control who gets to win and who doesn't. And so if I know more about that industry, then I feel like it puts me in a better place. I don't know yet. We'll see. We'll see how that works out. But I truly love this book. Again, I haven't completely finished it because it is kind of a downer. But it's a really good read. Now, the other book that I want to mention that goes along with this one is Growth Hacker Marketing by Ryan Holiday. And this is more of a recent read for me, but I felt like it went with the other one because it talks about how to embed virality into your business at the beginning of building it. So I wish I had read this one at the beginning because I maybe would have made some different decisions when I started my creative business, but I do feel that it is truly helpful in kind of helping you understand how to create a marketing strategy that actually is designed to go viral. He talks about how he had a very traditional introduction to marketing after working at American Apparel, I believe. And then he gives some examples of different companies and how they used technology to actually skyrocket their business's growth and embedded that kind of in how they structured the business itself. I highly recommend this one as well if you're looking for more tangible ways to apply things that you learned in the other book. Now, the last book recommendation that I want to share with you guys is one that I was trying to decide if I wanted to share or not because it is highly recommended, but for me it was one of the most influential books that I ever read, and it was the first business book that I read, so I do feel like it is worth the read, and that is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. There is a reason why this book comes so highly recommended. It delves into so many different topics, but for me, what was the most big takeaway that I took away was the importance of making quick decisions and the importance of realizing that people who are good in business are people who actually make quick decisions. Now, someone who hears that may think, oh no, that means that someone is just really impulsive. But what it means actually is that people who are good in business have learned to trust their gut and have learned to trust their instinct. And something that I've seen so often when it comes to creative people is that they overthink things so much to the point where they don't do anything. And that's not getting you anywhere. All that's doing is building up anxiety within you and getting you further away from actually producing things that could possibly move you forward. And the great thing is that if you make a bad decision, you can just go and make another decision to fix it. But ultimately, you learn along the way how to trust your actual business gut. And so that was a huge takeaway for me, and something that honestly I've just continued to work on is how can I trust myself? How can I learn to make better decisions for myself and for my business? I do think that part of that is because I truly do understand my business values and my values as a person. And so making that decision has become easier because I understand what things are important to me and what things are ultimately important for my business. But I highly recommend that book. Like I said, all of the books will be listed down below. That's one that I want to buy as well because I want to keep it in my home, but I do think it is definitely worth the read. And that is it, you guys. Those are some of my favorite books as a creative business person, a micro-influencer, content creator, you name it, anything that combines creative work and business. These are books that I truly feel have affected me and how I'm going along on my journey. I know that sometimes it can feel like you're just very alone and you're kind of just floating out here. And so books have been something that I found really grounds me, but also helps me to have more information and just helps me to move forward. So if you are constantly looking for new books to read, like I said, I do share my current reads on my Instagram and my stories. So you can find me there if you are looking for more recommendations down the line. But if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you have book recommendations, let me know in the comments down below. I will see you guys in my next video next weekend. Later.